العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لشيخنا ومشايخه وجميع المسلمين. 012, the king who believed.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Last week we spoke about the time in the life of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca prior to this specific moment, which we're going to be discussing today, inshallah, where the Prophet ﷺ started to experience problems with the Quraysh, and trouble started to happen in Mecca as a result of the Prophet ﷺ calling others to the worship of Allah. We spoke about the trials that the Muslims had to face. We spoke about the first martyrs in Islam. Who were the first martyrs in Islam? The first shuhada in Islam? Yasir and his wife Sumayya. And we spoke about their son Ammar, who survived the torture and the persecution, and he lived after that for a period of time. Today, inshallah, we're going to be speaking about the king who believed. Anyone know what this is referring to? Al-Najashi. Yeah.
Ahsanallahu alaykum. As the number of the Prophet ﷺ followers increased, so the enemies of the Muslims grew more and more angry.
So why did they grow more and more angry? Well, a number of reasons. First of all, Shaitan will encourage those who are the enemies of Islam to continuously attack and show hatred to the believers, to Tawheed, to the oneness of Allah. And one only has to look at, for example, this country and how sometimes Muslims are shown animosity and hatred just simply for being Muslim. And that's a sign of the hatred a person has as a result of Shaitan instilling that kind of hatred towards those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, that hatred could stem from other reasons. Of course, it's from Shaitan, but there may be other reasons for this. It may be as a result of not truly understanding the deen of Islam. So we know, for example, that whenever people would visit Mecca, the Quraysh would tell them, don't listen to what this man has to say. Don't listen to the words of this man called Muhammad. And so they would close their ears, or they would avoid the Prophet ﷺ when he would be reciting, or they would avoid having conversations with him because of what the Quraysh had told them. Others, they would hate what they thought was something which was going against the traditions of the Quraysh. For example, disuniting the Quraysh, showing disunity. And this was one of the issues that Umar radiallahu anhu had. Prior to him becoming Muslim, he had a hatred for Islam and a hatred for the Prophet ﷺ. Why? One of the reasons was because he didn't like how the Prophet ﷺ was disuniting the Quraysh. This tribal hierarchy, this whole system the Quraysh had in place, the might of Quraysh, this reputation the Quraysh had. He was a proud Qurayshi member. And so the Muslims had just come, the Prophet ﷺ had just come and called people to Islam from the different members of the different tribes of Quraysh, from the senior members, from those who were of a lowly tribe, from the slaves, from former slaves, and they were all accepting Islam. And now you had sons who were against fathers, brothers who were against other brothers, etc. And so you had this division that was being caused. And Umar radiallahu anhu was an individual who was a proud Qurayshi member. He was somebody who had pride of being from that part of the Arab world. And so he had this hatred towards Islam for this reason. So you're seeing more and more of this animosity. And of course, Wallahu mutimmu nurihi wa law kariha al-kafirun. Allah continues to shine the light of Islam even when the disbelievers hate it. Meaning it's something, and you see this happening today. The more you attack Islam, the more Islam becomes stronger. The more hatred there is, the more attacks there are on Islam, the more criticism people have of Islam, Islam becomes stronger. It's unlike anything else. Normally, the more you criticize a group or a place or an idea or a tradition, the more it's criticized, the weaker it becomes. Because eventually the numbers and the criticisms and the arguments and the media, etc., it's so overpowering that people just tend to stop whatever it is that's being criticized. They don't want to do it anymore. whether it's an idea or an ideology or a tradition, whatever it is, or it's a country, for example. Islam is something which, whenever it's attacked, the believers become stronger. Those who had Iman, the Iman becomes stronger. They're more proud of Islam. They want to practice Islam even more. And so this is an example of the followers of Islam, especially in this era, in the early days of Islam, with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And so harm increased upon the Muslims. Harm increased upon the Prophet ﷺ. Some examples of the attacks upon the Prophet ﷺ. Once he was reciting by the Kaaba, and some of the Quraysh members, they took him and they tied him with a piece of cloth around his neck until his face became red. He wasn't able to breathe. And so Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu rushed to stop them. And he told them, أَتَقَتُلُونَ رَجُلًا أَنْ يَقُولَ رَبِّيَ اللَّهِ. Are you going to kill a man who is simply saying, my Lord is Allah? You're attacking this man just because he's claiming to be, he's not harming anybody, he's not attacking anybody, he's only claiming that there is one God. And so they beat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as a result of him trying to defend the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that statement of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is in the Quran. أَتَقَتُلُونَ رَجُلًا أَنْ يَقُولَ رَبِّيَ اللَّهِ. And so again it shows us the status of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu also. The famous incident of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying by the Kaaba, and Abu Jahl was with his cronies, his advisors, or his friends, his allies, and he started to say, who is going to be the one who will take the entrails of the camel, meaning once the camel's been sacrificed and slaughtered and all the meat has been taken, what are you left with? Just the intestines, and what's in the intestines, the remains, the waste. So he said, who's going to take the waste of the camel, the entrails of the camel, and dump it on the Prophet ﷺ? So one of them said, I will. And so he went, took the entrails, and it's just filth. He goes to the Prophet ﷺ while he's in sajda and throws it on top of the Prophet ﷺ while he's prostrated. And they're all laughing. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said they were hitting themselves, because they were laughing so much. It was like a big joke to them. And Fatima radiallahu anha came out. She's a young girl. She's the youngest daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. She takes off the entrails. The Prophet ﷺ raises his hands. And then Abu Jahl and his cronies, they stop laughing. And they just start looking and listening. Because they know every single time the Prophet ﷺ would raise his hand and make dua, his dua would be responded to. So they stop laughing. And he starts making dua. And he says, Allahumma alayka bi Abi Jahl. Oh Allah, curse Abu Jahl. I leave the affairs of Abu Jahl in your hands. Oh Allah, I leave the affairs of this person in your hands. Everyone who was there were several people there. By name, he mentions them to Allah. And he's just been oppressed. And the dua of the oppressor is accepted based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, at the Battle of Badr, the battle never ended except that I saw every single one of those people who the Prophet ﷺ made dua against dead on the battlegrounds of the Battle of Badr. They were all dead. And their bodies had been thrown into the well of Badr. And so this was a response and a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a result of the oppression that was shown to the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims in Mecca. So you have these examples of this kind of oppression that was taking place. It was becoming very difficult now for the Prophet ﷺ and for the companions.
Assalamu alaikum. At last, some of the Muslims decided to go to another country in order to live in peace.
Except the Prophet ﷺ. He ordered the companions to go somewhere. But he never left. Why? Why wouldn't he just leave? Very simply, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hadn't commanded him. And again, this is an example of what? Proof of the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? How is this proof? Because logically, if this wasn't a command from Allah, then this person who's claiming to be a messenger, what would he say? He would say, look, it's getting a bit difficult here. I think me out of all the people should leave. You guys, if you die, you'll be fine, go to Jannah, whatever. Me, I'm in charge, I'm the leader, I'm still in charge, I need to have a following. I need to leave first. I'm the main one who needs to leave. But it's the opposite. He says, Allah has given you permission to travel elsewhere. And so the Prophet ﷺ doesn't travel, he doesn't go anywhere. And again, this shows us the sincerity of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ. He wasn't doing this for power. He could have easily just gone to Abyssinia, gained followers there, got some rest and respite over there, a break from the torture, or gone elsewhere, as we'll see when we talk about the hijrah as well, the way it happened. But the point is here that he's been given commands by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he doesn't do anything except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It was only 5 years since the Archangel Jibreel had first come to the Prophet ﷺ, and 2 years since the Prophet ﷺ had spoken out in public. The Muslims asked the Prophet ﷺ to allow them to leave Mecca. He agreed, saying, "It would be better for you to go to Abyssinia. The king there is a man that is just, and it is a friendly country. Stay there until Allah makes it possible for you to return."
So, what does the Prophet ﷺ say to them? He says to them, it would be better for you to go to Abyssinia. Why? The king there is a just man. And it's a friendly country, meaning you'll be safe there, and stay there until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it possible for you to return. When was this? This is 5 years after the hijrah, in the month of Rajab. So they start making preparations to make the hijrah to Abyssinia. And there were 2 migrations to Abyssinia. One was in the 5th year after the prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ, and the second was in the 7th year of the hijrah. So there were 2 7th year of the prophethood. So the point is there were 2 different migrations. In the first migration, you had a number of companions traveling to Abyssinia for protection, to save themselves from the persecution of the Quraysh. Now, where is Abyssinia? I'm sure many of us are aware. Abyssinia is modern-day Eritrea and Ethiopia, primarily Ethiopia. There's that, right? Yeah. Primarily it's Ethiopia. So that's, I don't know if it's Somalia. Is it Somalia as well? Or? I think from what I know, it's mostly Ethiopia. I think partly Eritrea, but primarily it's modern-day Eritrea. And in those days, it was called Abyssinia. And it was a Christian country. Abyssinia was a Christian country. So the king was known to be a righteous king, a just king. And migration in those days isn't like migration today. What's the difference? Especially in Arabia. It's a tribal land. You essentially never left your hometown. You were born in Mecca, you lived in Mecca, you married in Mecca, you worked in Mecca, and you died in Mecca. That's how it was. Why? Because of your tribe. Your tribe is from there. That's one of the main reasons. Leaving your city and living elsewhere is a declaration that you are leaving your tribe. It's like absconding from a country and pledging allegiance to another country and joining the nationality and the government of another country. For example, it's not the same today in this day and age, but it would be similar, for example, somebody leaving the Roman Empire and going to the Persian Empire, for example. It's a declaration of switching sides. And so in those days, it just wasn't done. If you were with your tribe was everything. It was like your gang, we mentioned it before. You were loyal to your tribe all the way till the end. So you never left. Another reason is because it wasn't easy to do. Nowadays, how many of us have lived elsewhere, or maybe we're thinking about moving elsewhere, or we know people who've lived elsewhere. Maybe people have lived in 2 or 3 or 4 different places, and they keep coming back here, or they go elsewhere. We have people who, our parents or grandparents were from other countries, and now we're here. We know maybe our children are living elsewhere. A person might be, from here, and maybe he's not originally from here, maybe he's from a different country, and then he moved to 2 or 3 other countries, then he came here, maybe he has plans to go elsewhere. In his lifetime, he'll live in 5 or 6 or 7 different places. So it's different today than it was in those days. It's very easy today, as a result of cars and trains and airplanes and ships, just to go and live somewhere else. You could grab an airplane and go to Saudi Arabia in 6 hours, and a person could live there. It's not something which is hard to do. It's very easy. In those days, it wasn't easy to do. To take all your belongings, first of all, you couldn't take all your belongings because it just wasn't possible. You didn't have suitcases and airplanes and taxis. You had your camel, and you could take your camel with whatever you could, whatever the camel could carry, and that's all you could take with you if you were to travel somewhere else. And this was the case with those who were traveling to Abyssinia. If they had family behind, maybe they could leave some of their belongings and possessions with them if they had space in their small homes. But otherwise, you took whatever you could, and everything else you couldn't take, you had to leave it behind. It would go to other people. And so it was difficult in those days to just get up and leave, as a result of travel being so difficult. And also leaving everything behind. It wasn't like you had banks in those days where you could store your money, then you could wire the money once you arrive in Abyssinia and get your money from there. There was nothing like this. The money you had is the money you could take from Mecca. That's all you had. You couldn't, have somebody there, with some money that you could just take from them. There's nothing. There's no system in place. And of course, nobody's been Abyssinia before. Yeah, it's not like they've been there previously. All these people, they're new to Abyssinia and to the culture and the tradition. So it's very different. On top of the fact that Abyssinia is a place which is in a different continent. It's not even an Arab country. They speak a different language. They're going there, it's a different continent, which means it's a different language, different food, different culture, different traditions, different religion. And so it's a very difficult thing to do. I'm sure all of us have that experience. Traveling and living somewhere which has a different culture to what we used to. It's not something which is an easy thing to do. So you have all of these challenges. And it was something which was very, very rare in those days. Also, in those days, leaving Mecca or leaving an Arab country, Arab city or an Arab village where you were part of the tribe that lived there was actually embarrassing to the tribe that you belonged to. Why was it embarrassing? Because you're leaving for a reason. Because people don't leave. So if people hear such and such person from Banu Hashim, or from another tribe in Banu Manaf, or from another tribe from Mecca is leaving, they're going to another country, they're going to start thinking, why is he leaving? Why is he leaving his tribe behind? His tribe is all he has. His tribe is supposed to protect him, support him, help him. So that means that tribe isn't helping him and supporting him. And so it's embarrassing. What kind of tribe are you? Your own tribal members are abandoning you. They're leaving and they're going elsewhere. Which means you can't even take care of your own tribal members. So it was an embarrassing thing. It was hugely embarrassing for the Quraysh that they would have people leaving. And eventually, in the second migration, in the initial migration, you had around 15 people traveling. Roughly around 15 people. In the second migration, you had around 80 people traveling. There were 2 hijras, as we mentioned. 80 people is a huge number. Mecca, you have around 1,000 people in Mecca. That's like almost 10%. Like 1 out of every 10 people was making the hijrah to Abyssinia in the second migration. That's a huge amount. And it's something you can notice in a small town. And again, it was embarrassing for the Quraysh. So this is a huge deal. It's a big deal. And also on top of this, it shows us the iman and the faith of the companions. This is the first time they are making a hijrah before Medina, obviously, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect their deen, because they're not able to worship Allah Azza wa Jal in Mecca as they wish to. And so they're sacrificing everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is another example of how we see the status of the Muhajirin being of a higher level than the other companions, such as the Ansar. They all are companions, but in terms of status, we see now some of the reasons why the Muhajirun have the greatest status when it comes to being the companions of the Prophet. Yeah.
Ahsanallahu alaykum. The Muslims prepared for the journey. They decided to wait until night so they could leave without being seen. The first 16 left Mecca after reaching the shore of the Red Sea, crossed over to Abyssinia.
Yeah, so this is the first hijrah, around 16 people. 16 people made the hijrah. Who made the hijrah in the first migration to Abyssinia? From them, Uthman ibn Affan. Uthman ibn Affan and his wife Ruqayya. Ruqayya bint Muhammad, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. Uthman ibn Affan was married to Ruqayya at this moment in time. They both made the hijrah to Abyssinia. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, the famous companion, one of the 10 promised Jannah, an individual who was known to be a very wealthy and successful businessman, spent lots of money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another Uthman, called Uthman ibn Mad'un, Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. Who was Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam? Sorry? Ashar Mubashir bil Jannah, one of the 10 promised Jannah. His son was a very famous companion, Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Zubayr ibn Awam was married to Asma bint Abi Bakr. So she was the sister of Aisha. And they were blessed with a child called Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr himself was known to be a very righteous companion, one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and one of the more younger companions who lived after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, another famous companion. Mus'ab ibn Umayr in Mecca, before Islam, was known to be one of the most privileged young men in Mecca. He was like a celebrity. He was a young man, he was handsome, he was wealthy, came from a wealthy background, he was like a celebrity. You know these people who are famous just for the sake of being famous, they don't have any. Today we're talking about certain celebrities who don't have any special skills. They're just known for being famous. They're famous for being famous. They don't have any special skills or anything. They're just celebrities in the public eye. They look nice, they dress nice, etc. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, prior to Islam, he was intelligent. That's the difference we can have with Mus'ab radiallahu anhu. He was known for his wisdom and his intelligence, very sharp. But otherwise, his family was a wealthy family, and they were basically obsessed with making sure that their family had the best clothes, the best shoes. They always looked the best. And Mus'ab, when he accepted Islam, he abandoned all of those things. And his mother said to him that if you stay as a Muslim, I'm not going to give you anything. So you can understand her mindset. She's thinking about her image. She's thinking my family is going to be the best dressed family. Everyone's looking at us. You know, we're always on top of all the latest fashions. And so she said, if you stay as a Muslim, I'm not going to give you anything. No more perks, no more nice clothes and shoes and everything. No more money. And so Mus'ab radiallahu anhu abandoned everything. He shunned it all. He said, fine, I don't need any of those things. And so he basically became one of the poorest. And he would have ripped and ragged clothes. And the Prophet ﷺ would see him and he would praise Mus'ab radiallahu anhu and mention how he was before he accepted Islam and how things have changed for Mus'ab radiallahu anhu. And he died in one of the battles. Also Abu Salama and his wife Salama. They were from the ones who performed the hijrah to Abyssinia. And Salama, when she was there with Abu Salama passed away. And as a result of Abu Salama passing away, Salama, she said, when he died, I couldn't think of anyone who was better than him that I could be with. I couldn't imagine being with anybody else. I couldn't think of anybody who was better than Abu Salama. And then it was the Prophet ﷺ himself who proposed to Salama. And that's how Salama became one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. So some of these companions are the ones who made the hijrah to Abyssinia. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu intended to make the hijrah to Abyssinia. And as he was making preparations and he was about to leave, he came across a man from the Quraysh. This man's name was Ibn al-Daghina. Ibn al-Daghina, he wasn't a Muslim, but he was sympathetic to the Muslims. He said, where are you going? He said, I'm leaving to worship Allah because I'm not allowed to worship Allah here. Ibn al-Daghina said something very interesting, very profound. Ibn al-Daghina said to him, Inna mithlaka ya Abu Bakr la yakhruj wa la yukhraj. Someone like you, someone of your status of Abu Bakr, doesn't leave and isn't thrown out. Why? He said, Innaka taksibul ma'dum. He said, you help the poor and the needy. You feed the poor and the needy. Wa tasilur rahim. And you keep ties of kinship. And you help those who are afflicted. And you're honorable to your guests. And you help people fulfill their rights. What does this sound like? Who does this sound like? This is a similar kind of praise I was given to the Prophet ﷺ. How amazing is this? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the greatest man, or the greatest companion who ever lived, the greatest man after the Prophet ﷺ, is being praised in a similar manner that the Prophet ﷺ was being praised, and both of them were being praised by different people who don't know each other. Khadija praising the Prophet ﷺ, mentioning similar things about how he was good to his family members, good to his hosts, feeding the poor, helping those who are in need. Likewise, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu being given the same praise by this individual. And it really shows us how similar they were, how righteous they were, And it makes you understand how they were such good and close friends. And also it shows us the status of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, how similar he was to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So he said, Ibn Daghina said, I'll protect you. It's a case of protection. His own tribe has refused to protect Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. We're not going to protect you. You're like Muslim and we're going to be harmed. We disown you. We're not going to help you. So he has no protection. Ibn Daghina says, I'll protect you. And this was allowed in those days, tribal custom. If an individual from another tribe gave protection to somebody else, he was valid, regardless of who he was. So he says, okay, fine, but I'm still going to worship Allah. They said, fine. He said, fine. So they went, Ibn Daghina said, he's under my protection. The Quraysh said, fine, he can continue to worship. After a short period of time, he would start to recite in his home, reciting loudly. The women and children would gather to listen to his recitation because he was so powerful. And the Quraysh told him he needs to stop. He refused. Ibn Daghina came and said to him, you need to stop, otherwise I can't give you protection from Quraysh. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, I relieve you of your protection and I seek and continue to have the protection of Allah. So I don't need your protection anymore. The point being that initially he was intending to make the hijrah to Abyssinia, but as a result of Ibn Daghina giving him protection, he never made the hijrah to Abyssinia. And Ibn Daghina, we don't know that much about him. Seems like he never accepted Islam when he was alive. Yeah.
Ahsanallahu alaykum. Another 83 men and 19 women followed, all hoping to be welcomed by the king and people of that country.
So this is the second hijrah. They're both mentioned here. Another 83 and 19 women followed. When did they follow? A number of years later. Why did they go a number of years later? There was an incident when the Prophet ﷺ was reciting the Quran by the Kaaba, and the Quraysh were listening. And they were listening attentively. They were amazed by the Quran. At the end, there was a sajda. فَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ وَاعْبُدُوا. And so the Prophet ﷺ prostrated. The companions who were there prostrated. Quraysh themselves prostrated. Not because they were believers, but they were just so amazed by the Quran, they felt like they had to prostrate. They said, these words are just unbelievable, they're remarkable. We've never heard anything like this. So they prostrated. And so people who weren't there, they started hearing news that the Quraysh were prostrating. So they thought the Quraysh had accepted Islam. So news went to Abyssinia. The Abyssinians thought they've accepted Islam. So they went back. They went back to Mecca. When they realized this is not true, they didn't accept Islam, some of them decided to stay, some of them decided to go back. That's the second hijrah now, a couple of years later. In the second hijrah, other companions went to Abyssinia and some decided to stay. In the second hijrah, Uthman bin Affan and his wife decided to stay in Mecca now. They didn't go back. They didn't make the second hijrah. From those who made the second hijrah was Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the brother of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Yeah.
Sallallahu alaykum. This was the first hijrah or migration in Islam.
Yeah, so it's two hijrahs, but this is the first hijrah in Islamic history, meaning it's the first time a group of people have, from the Muslims, traveled elsewhere as a result of their deen. So they went to Abyssinia. It's a non-Muslim country. So can one say a person can make hijrah to a non-Muslim country? They went to a non-Muslim country. Can somebody use this as evidence and say, look, they went to a non-Muslim country, so we can go to a non-Muslim country? And say we're doing hijrah?
No.
Why?
Because I've heard, like, you can't ally with you have to live in the Muslim lands. And even we can't live here forever. I've heard.
But why did they go to Abyssinia then? Why did they go to Abyssinia?
It was temporary to avoid harm.
So can we go somewhere else to avoid harm? Non-Muslim country?
But there wasn't any Muslim countries then.
Very good. There was no Muslim country. There was nowhere else they could go. They couldn't go anywhere else. If there was a Muslim country, they would have gone there. When Medina was conquered, what did the Prophet ﷺ say? La hijrata ba'da al-yawm. There is no hijrah after today. Meaning after Mecca is conquered, a person there's no hijrah anymore. Because now people can stay in Mecca, in Medina. So there is no issue with regards to hijrah. The point being here, you can't make hijrah to a non-Muslim land. Okay, it's not called a hijrah. A person may go for other means, okay, and that's another story in of itself. The basic principle is that if a person is able to study, to learn his deen and practice his deen openly, and practice the fundamentals of his deen, it's permissible. If he's being restricted, then it wouldn't be permissible for him to live in that land. That's the basic principle when it comes to living in another country. And obviously, the ideal situation would be to live in a Muslim land, in a land where the Muslims are the majority. No land is 100% Islamic, but the point is, compared to here, if you were to live in an Islamic country, in the Middle East or elsewhere, it would still be better than living here. But again, if a person is able to worship and practice his deen without any resistance, then there's nothing wrong with him living in another country, and Allah knows best.
Ahsanallahu ilayk. The Meccans were furious when they first discovered that these Muslims had secretly left the city, for among them were the sons and daughters of many of the leading families of Mecca.
Yeah, for example, the children of Abu Talib, Uthman ibn Affan, was from a very, very well-respected tribe. The others, Zubayr ibn Awam, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, these people aren't like small fish in Mecca. And as we said, it's a small town. So if these people are leaving, they're furious, and it's also a case of embarrassment. People will ask, why are these people from your tribe leaving? Why are they leaving? Or they chose to leave. But why would someone choose to leave the tribe? It wouldn't undertake. In those days, it was a different mentality. Why would they choose to leave? Something must have happened. Oh, they have a different religion. So you didn't allow them to live with you if they are following a different religion. You weren't happy with them. So they weren't comfortable because you were probably harming them. So they had to leave. Meaning you weren't being good to your own tribal members. You all came back to the tribe. So if you weren't being good to your tribe, that was the main thing to other people around Arabia. When they hear this happening, they're thinking, this is embarrassing. How can your own tribal members just leave? It was something they couldn't even imagine. They couldn't even imagine.
The anger of the Meccans was even greater when they found out that the Muslims had been warmly welcomed in Abyssinia. The leaders of Quraysh decided to send 2 men to the Abyssinian king in hopes of persuading him to send the Muslims back. These were Amr ibn al-As, a very clever speaker, and Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a. Before they met this king, they gave each of his advisors a gift.
So these 2 people that were sent, who were they? The Quraysh now are saying to themselves, they can't stay here. This is embarrassing. We can't have them leave. So on one hand they're saying they can't be Muslim, on the other hand they're saying they can't go to another land. They have to stay here. Essentially what they're going to keep them as prisoners, basically. That's what they have to do. They can't let them leave. It's embarrassing. It's like we're not in control anymore of our own people. So they sent 2 people. Who did they send? An individual by the name of Amr ibn al-As. Amr ibn al-As was an elderly Qurashi, a senior member of the Quraysh, and he was somebody who was very wise, very clever, very intelligent, and he was very eloquent, very well spoken, and he was like a politician. He was that kind of person, always 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, always knew how to speak, who to speak to, what to say, how to get in one's good books. Also, he was close to An-Najashi. He knew An-Najashi. Amr ibn al-As would travel to other parts of Arabia and outside of Arabia. He was familiar with An-Najashi previously. And Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a. Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a, we don't know as much about him. Some narrations mention it wasn't Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a, it was somebody else. Both of these people, though, interestingly, accepted Islam later on. Amr ibn al-As, in fact, became the governor of Misr, of Egypt, in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, and he also became the governor of other parts of the Muslim world. And his son was one of the most well-known Ubbad, worshippers of Allah from the companions. One of the most humble and great worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His name was Abdullah ibn Amr. The famous hadith of the companion who wanted to fast every single day. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, fast, 3 days. Ayyam al-Bid, the 3 middle days, 13th, 14th, and 15th. He said, I want to do more. He said, fast Mondays and Thursdays. He said, I want to do more. He said, fast one day and eat another day. Alternate. One day fasting, one day not fasting. This was Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu. So he was known for his ibadah, known for his worship. This is the son of Amr ibn al-As. So he was very clever. So what does Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As do? Amr ibn al-As, before he even gets there, he delivers and sends gifts to the advisors of al-Najashi because he knows them. And what does he say? He says, some people have left our land to hide in your country. Look at the words. They're hiding in your country. As if they're, why would you hide? As if you're criminals. So look at the way he's speaking. Some people have left our lands to hide in your country. And our leaders have sent us as representatives to your ruler to persuade him to send them back. So when we speak to the king, help us give advice to the king. Meaning, help us be on our side when we speak to the king. So he's already prepared everything. Meaning everything is against the Muslims. Yeah.
Our leaders have sent us to your ruler to persuade him to send them back. So when we speak to the king about them, do advise him to give them up to us. The advisors agreed to do what the Meccans wished.
So essentially it's like bribery. You know, we've given you gifts. All these gifts, they're for you. By the way, we have some people who are living in Abyssinia. Can you help us talk to the king so we can have them come back? It's the same thing that's done nowadays, isn't it? Same thing. You know, they're giving gifts. Big corporations, big conglomerates and companies give gifts to the politicians. Okay, I remember the World Cup, they were given like free tickets to politicians. From different companies were giving politicians free tickets, and also there's all kinds of things happening amongst politicians. It's all like favors. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If I become the leader, if I become the prime minister, the president, then I'll help you out later on, etc. Same thing, same kind of concept.
Amr ibn al-As and Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a then went to the king and presented him also with a gift, saying, Your Highness, these people have abandoned the religion we have always followed in Mecca, but they have not even become Christians like you.
So look what Amr is saying. They've left our religion, but they haven't become Christian like you. So what are you doing? You're alienating those people who are living there. We don't know what these people are. We don't know who they are. So what happens if the king doesn't know who these people are who are living in his country? Doesn't know what their faith is, what their beliefs are. They could potentially be dangerous. They're not on our religion. They're not on your religion. They're not Christian. We don't know what they are. They could be doing anything. They could be plotting anything. They could be dangerous to you. And so he's already plotting. So the way he's speaking, you can tell Amr ibn al-As is very gifted in terms of the way he would speak and the way he would plan things and the way he would prepare his arguments.
The royal advisors who were also present told the king that the Meccans had spoken the truth and that he should send the Muslims back to their own people.
As they were supposed to, based on what Amr ibn al-As had told them beforehand.
At this, the king became angry and said, No, by God, I will not give them up. Those who have come to ask for my protection settled in my country, and chosen me rather than others shall not be betrayed.
And this shows us the justice of the king. It shows us the righteousness of al-Najashi. What does he say? He says, No, by Allah, I won't give them up. Those who have come to ask my protection, they've come for a reason. Out of all the places they could have gone, they've come here. Why have they come here? Because they know they can see protection and safety here. And if they're coming for protection to live here, there's a reason why. They must have been harmed wherever they were living. SubhanAllah, it's a shame that the leaders of today don't have the same mindset, especially in the West. People are escaping and leaving war-torn countries, trying to come on board to live here, and they're just trying to send them back and ignoring them, and not trying to welcome them. It's just this lack of mercy and lack of understanding. So it shows that Najashi's understanding, his wisdom, his righteousness. He's saying they're chosen to be with me and they won't be betrayed. I'm not going to send them back. Yeah.
I will summon them and ask them about what these two men have said. If the Muslims are as the Meccans say, I will give them up and send them back to their own people. But if the Meccans have lied, I will protect the Muslims.
Again, this is actually from the traits of a believer. When a Muslim judges between two people, what does he do? He listens to both sides. What does the Najashi say? He says, I'm going to summon them and I'll listen to what they have to say. I'll listen to what they have to say. If the Meccans have lied, I'll protect the Muslims. And if they're as the Meccans say, I will send them back. So I'm going to listen to both sides. And this is the sign of a good judge. He listens to both sides of the argument before making a judgment.
Umar was very upset by this, for the last thing he wanted was for the king to hear what the Muslims had to say.
Why was Umar upset? Why didn't he want the king to hear what the Muslims had to say?
The truth.
Because it's the truth. And the truth hurts, as they say. You know, Umar radiallahu anhu isn't a companion at this moment in time. He knows the power of Islam. He knows the power of the Quran. He knows the arguments make sense. So he's worried that if Najashi listens to the Muslims, he's going to be more sympathetic to the Muslims. And this is what happened. And Amr ibn As is trying his best to avoid this.
Ahsanallahu ilayk. The king then sent for the Muslims. When they entered, they did not kneel before him, as was the custom of the Abyssinians. Why do you not kneel before our king? They were asked by one of the advisors. We kneel only to Allah, they replied. So the king asked them to tell him about their religion.
So they come in, and from them, of course, is Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. By the way, you can imagine from their perspective, they have no idea what's going on. They're living in Abyssinia, and this is the second batch. They're living in Abyssinia, and Najashi orders to bring the Muslims to the palace. Guards go to find the Muslims. They knock on the door. The companions open the door. There's guards of the king, and they say, "Come, the king wants to speak to you." Can you imagine how the companions would be feeling? Imagine if you have a knock on the door, and they said, "The prime minister wants to speak to you," and there's guards going to interrogate you, and you're like, "What's going on? What's going to happen?" You know, the king wants to speak to you, or the president of the United States wants to have a word with all of you. It's nerve-wracking. You don't know what's going to happen. What are they going to do? What are they going to say? Why am I being summoned? What's happening? And so Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and the others, they go. And of course, when they enter, they don't kneel. They don't prostrate to the king. So already Najashi is thinking in the back of his mind, this is unusual. This isn't common. This is the norm, to kneel or prostrate before the king when you enter. And of course, the Muslims don't prostrate except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Amr ibn As is thinking, this is perfect. This is so good. They're not prostrating. It's not going to look good. It's already in our favor.
Ahsanallahu ilayk. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, Ali's brother and the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was chosen to speak for the Muslims.
So Ja'far radiallahu anhu, he's asked by Najashi. They're all asked by Najashi. Speak up and speak about who you are. Give your point of view. I want to hear what you want to say. These people want to take you back. They've come to take you back to Mecca. Tell me why I shouldn't send you with them. And you have no preparation. You haven't prepared a speech to the king. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't even know why you were there. 5 minutes ago, you didn't know why you were there. And now, you're basically about to be sent back. You're this close to being sent back. And now you have to present your case. No preparation. Can you imagine Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the pressure he was under? But the speech he gives is something which is still recorded in books of hadith. And it shows us in the books of history. It shows us how eloquent he was, and how he spoke, and the things he said, and how he said them. And it's something which is studied up till this day. How eloquent he was, how well spoken he was. In fact, in the school I teach, we used to have a textbook which actually went through the speech of Ja'far radiallahu anhu and spoke about public speaking and the skills of public speaking from the speech of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. I mean, that's how good it was. It's unbelievable. I will mention some of it today, inshallah. So now Ja'far radiallahu anhu is speaking. He stands up to represent the Muslims in front of the king. He's never seen him before, doesn't know him. He hasn't prepared anything. He has to stand up and now give a speech.
Ahsanallahu ilayk. He replied, "O king, at first we were among the ignorant. We and our ancestors had turned from the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who with Ismail rebuilt the Kaaba and worshipped only Allah. We used idols in our worship of Allah. We ate meat that had not been killed in the right way."
So look at all these things he's mentioning. What does he mention first? First, we were ignorant people. Ignorance is something which nobody is proud of. Everyone can understand. You won't go to somebody and say, we were ignorant people, and he won't say, what's wrong with that? That's a good thing, ignorance. Nothing wrong with ignorance. No one likes to be an ignorant person. We were an ignorant people. we and our ancestors turned away from the faith of Ibrahim. It doesn't say the faith of Ismail or the faith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why Ibrahim? Because the Najashi is one religion. He's a Christian. We turned away from the faith of Ibrahim, who with Ismail rebuilt the Kaaba, the house of Allah, and worshipped only Allah. Because you also only worship one God. The three monotheistic religions, they have their own trinity, their own beliefs, but it's basically one God, even though they have, a corruption of the idea. Then he says we used idols in our worship of Allah. We used to worship idols. And of course, Christianity, with the exceptions of them making idols of Maryam and Isa alayhi salam, otherwise, the basic principle even in Christianity is that you shouldn't worship idols. It's part of their 10 commandments. Thou shalt only worship one God. And this was our life, or we ate meat that had been killed not in the right way. And we never respected the rights of our neighbors. The things he's mentioning are things which, generally speaking, Najashi could agree with. It's not alien to him. These are, things which are from the fitrah. Yeah.
We did not respect the rights of our neighbors. The strong took advantage of the weak. We did terrible things of which I dare not speak.
So the rights weren't given to the neighbors. The strong took advantage of the weak. Who does the Najashi welcome in his land? Those who had been oppressed, those who had been taken advantage of. So Ja'far is hitting all the right notes to appeal to a Najashi. And this is off the cuff, no preparation. And subhanAllah, you can see how he's preparing, or how he's just saying this speech without any kind of preparation. Just in his mind, he's thinking about it and then he's saying it. Yeah.
This was our life until Allah sent a messenger ﷺ from among us, one of our relatives, whom we have always known to be honest, innocent, and faithful.
Okay, this was how we were until Allah sent a messenger. One of our relatives. What does that do to the king? Okay, this person, he must be somebody who's trustworthy. They know who it is. One of our relatives. If he had said, we believed in a messenger from another land, Jashi would say, well, who is this person? Why would you trust him and not from somebody from your own land? He's from our own relatives, meaning he's related to us. We know who he is. We've known him for a long time. He's always known to have been somebody who is honest and innocent and faithful, known for his good character. He's not seeking fame or wealth or anything